meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jeff?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Bob?
Here.
Taylor?
He knows of the meeting, but I guess he hasn't asked to be excused, so we'll have to call him absent until he shows up. If he does arrive. Here.
Jay?
Here.
Brandy? Here.
Okay, there's five assembly members present, one on the phone. That's Brandy Merle, and at this point, member Norheim is absent. So that brings us to the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and recite the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, that brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is item 3, approval of minutes. I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting on November 19th, 2018.
So moved.
Second. Motion been made by member Bucci, I believe, seconded by member Stanton Gregor. Any changes? All those in favor of leaving those meeting minutes like they are, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we approve those. Today, agenda, item 4, amend and approval of today's meeting agenda. I'd entertain a motion to either amend or approve as presented.
So moved.
Second. Okay, to approve. I would like to entertain one motion, if anybody's willing to make it, to change it. We have a pretty busy agenda today and a large audience. Under new business, items H and I, if there's an assembly member, H and I, to have a separate meeting for those. There's a lot of new proposals on our capital projects list, the manager's policy for the budget, and I think that's something we should really spend some time going over instead of just trying to not force it in, but try to absorb it all today.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question about that?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. When would you propose putting those on the agenda? At the second meeting in December, or were you thinking in January? What was your vision? I guess if I would be inclined to amend it, I'd want to know what you were thinking.
Well, I was thinking, I talked to the manager about it today, earlier this morning, that there is no real urgent deadline for this. It'd be nice to get it done by the end of December. We could either put it on a meeting on the 17th, or we could have a special meeting some evening. It would have to be a special meeting. It couldn't just be a work session, because we'd be taking action if we decided to approve the capital projects list. So that's what our discussion was.
Do you have a preference thereof? Again, if I'm thinking about making a motion, I'd want to be in line with what you were thinking.
I don't know how busy the meeting's going to be on the 17th. There might be. I would prefer having a separate meeting in early some evening, if that works for people. So if you pick a date sometime next week, maybe.
Well, hang on. In that case, Debbie, how do Clerk Thompson? Since we've already had a motion in a second, can I just amend from there, or make a motion to amend?
Yes.
I guess then I would move to amend to remove H and I from new business to be set aside for a special meeting, time to be determined by the Assembly.
That sounds good, since I don't have the calendar in front of me and I'm not able, for some reason, to bring it up right now.
Okay.
Oh,
What, this one?
the Assembly Chambers calendar.
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah. So you can't find out. Member Mucci, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Member Stanton Gregor. Let's just do it next Monday.
If the assembly chambers are open, is that okay with the rest of the assembly? Mr. Lynn, you'd be the one that would be the hardest to get to town.
What dates are on the 12th, 13th?
12th and 13th, or Wednesday and Thursday of next week.
Could we move it to Wednesday? Because I have to be in town anyhow on Wednesday. That would help me out.
Would you be willing to have it in the evening meeting? Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Does that work for the rest of the assembly? Member Walhitter?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. No, I won't be available next week. I'm going to go deer hunting. That's already been planned. I got 7 people waiting for me.
That's an acceptable excuse.
For myself, Mr. Mayor, if it would be 13th, I'm unavailable. The 12th, I'd be available, but only till 6 o'clock, because I work in the evening, so I could do something before that, like 4 or 5 in there, if the assembly were so inclined.
Okay, Member Bucci, does that work for you? I know it's a work day.
Sure. We'll see how it goes.
Work day for all of us. So it's a proposed motion to have the H&I, the budget discussion items, on a meeting at 4 p.m. Wednesday the 12th, 4 p.m. And I can't imagine it taking 2 hours. There's a lot there to absorb, and there might be a lot of public comment, but so is everybody, any more discussion on the amendment? Just for the record, Member Norheim is with us. He's here, so take away the absent, please. And just to get Member Norheim up to speed, we're going over on the agenda for today, and I proposed a motion, and Member Greger made the motion, was seconded by Member Mucci, to move items H and I off of new business, which is the budget discussion and capital projects list, to a special meeting Wednesday, December 4th at 4 p.m.
December 12th?
That's the 12th. Did I say 12th?
Yeah, December 12th.
Yeah. Okay, all those in favor of amending the agenda to change to that, have a special meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
We will strike, thank you, Brandy, we'll strike H and I from today's agenda then. Remind me when I get there, I might try to go ahead with it anyway. So, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes for today's meeting as amended.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's a done deal, accepted agenda as amended. Public hearings, there's no public hearings today. There are no bid awards to be discussed today, and that brings us to item 7, which is visitors' views related to items on today's agenda. And I see a lot of people in the crowd that I'm sure are going to want to talk, so I'm going to limit the testimony to 3 minutes. So anybody want to talk the views related to items on today's agenda? Okay, just want to come forward, state your name, who you represent.
My name is Cindy Loganakis, and I represent myself and the community. I'm speaking in response to the proposed letter to Viking Cruises. If you look at the report by Southeast by the Numbers, which is included in the Southeast Conference webpage, has a lot of information about the regional economy. Overall, it says our population has decreased, but the segment of population 65 and older has increased. From 2014 to 2016, that increase was 10%. Many of this group are of reduced income, hence the sales tax breaks and other tax exemptions that have been so topical of late. From 2014 to 2016, the total seafood employment dropped 12%. Earnings dropped almost 20%. Shared fish taxes dropped by 53%. We have lost a cannery operation, apparently permanently. One bright spot in Southeast economy, according to Southeast by the Numbers, has been the visitor industry. If you also look at the 2015 Alaska Marine Highway Ferry Report, which is also on the web, on page 8, it will show you that since 1985, Alaska Marine Highway ferry traffic has also dropped by over 100,000 passengers per year. When those ferries are in port during the day, those passengers can be seen walking into town. They come to shop, they buy coffee, they travel around downtown, they get familiar with our community, and they provide an economic boost. When I served as chamber director, and I'm certain Mara would echo this, I heard repeatedly that summer revenue to local retailers was vital to their financial success throughout the year. There were no disaster declarations for small-town retail. I'm concerned that the letter to Viking Cruises is poorly thought through, and given the few visits planned, does not impose an undue burden on the community, but instead presents an opportunity. I would encourage more tourism planning and to do that as soon as possible on the desired level of tourism in Petersburg, the types to attract, and needed infrastructure, if any, to accommodate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Anybody else in the room with views? Mr. Haverlich?
Thank you. John Haverlich, 1204 South Nordic. I'm speaking for myself. And part of it's on the budget and part of it's on the cruise letter. When I was with PIA, I was able to raise $10 million that went to this community, and we're still getting $1 million a year because of those efforts, and especially thanks to Senator Murkowski for supporting us. And she still is. She's been fantastic. That's why I feel I can say something about the budget with some degree of expertise or at least support. Most of the things I think we should be supporting, and the first thing we should be supporting in the budget would be infrastructure. Just coming from Anchorage, it was really important. You could tell the places, the hotels were like small cities. The ones that had good infrastructure, good planning, monies behind what they were doing were fantastic. Unfortunately, I wasn't in one of those. But it was... it definitely makes a difference. I think you should be focused on that first, because being on an island, water, power, electric, sewage, it's paramount, because we were without any of that. And and we're on our own here. So I figured I'm positive that should be your first priority. And then naturally schools, since if we don't have good schools, why will people be here? Medical resources, the library, and then Parks and Rec. And the last would be senior services, because as we found in this last election, the seniors don't even support senior services, even though they're probably the best services we have. The people that run them are outstanding, and the work in them are fantastic, but by a 3-to-1 vote, the people that get those services aren't wanting to pay any taxes. So that does say quite a bit, and it should say quite a bit to you. Why should you support something at $500,000 a year when originally, when I was on this council, we were told the senior centers and all that would not only pay for itself, but would make us money, and instead we put millions of dollars into it every year, and probably another $500,000 this year. And if the people receiving those services aren't wanting to support them, they'd be crazy to. The other thing I wanted to get into was the cruise ship letter. I'm in support of it because I haven't heard any statistics, financial, saying if we have these big cruise ships out front, how much do they spend when they come to town? How much of the taxes are we getting? Will those taxes support the infrastructure that we need to keep these people in here? I know Parks and Recs this summer.
It's been 3 minutes, Mr. President.
Okay, this is the last part. I'll wrap it up. Couldn't even keep the outdoor facilities open through July. So if we can't do that for what we have now, how much money are you going to put into it to pull in more services, toilets, whatever, and will you be able to afford that from the monies coming in? Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next person, you want to step forward, state your name, who you represent, please?
Hi, my name is Jason Warner. I am the CFO of Petromarine Services, and I'm just here should one of the agenda items is the land swap with Petromarine, so should you guys have any questions, I'm available. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for introducing yourself. No opportunity to be able to ask you questions. And next person interested, Mr. Murgis.
My name is John Murgis. I'm representing myself and my business, Petersburg Marine, and I'm addressing the proposed letter suggesting limiting the cruise ship passengers coming into Petersburg. And I find that letter is somewhat unfriendly and it's somewhat harsh. Our economy definitely needs to be more diversified, and I think this is a good opportunity. The visitor industry affects us mostly just for 3 months of the year. It's not something that we have to put up with for all 12 months. And with my business, any of my customers who are home porting here in Petersburg and keeping their boats in storage for the winter. Some of them, their very first trips were on cruise ships, or their family. And the remark is, we want to come here because it's such a friendly spot. And I think it's a little bit unfriendly to suggest they don't come here. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next person wants to testify? Nancy? Whoever gets their hand up first and gets to the podium gets to talk next.
Thank you. Mayor Jensen and Borough Assembly members, we've had the opportunity, my husband and I, he's down south, so I'm representing Dave and I, to read your proposed letter to Viking Cruise Lines, asking them not to book trips to Petersburg. We have many problems with sending this letter at a time when we're still discussing it as a community. It gives the rest of the state and the tourism industry the feeling that we don't want you here. We know there are a lot of fears out there, and a lot of people have come to talk to us saying that, these 3,000 to 5,000, size boats are coming here and they're going to take over our town. And I think we probably all know here, or if we don't know, that's not true. There's many reasons why our location is kind of it doesn't lend itself to having those boats come in here. We don't have the docking facilities. Those big boats, they don't want to backtrack and come in here and go back out the same way. Absolutely not. And anyway, the Viking Cruise representative came and talked to some members of our community about proposing to come here with a 900-passenger boat 8 days in the summer of 2020. They would have to lighter their people into the dock, and they'd estimate about a third of the passengers will not even disembark the ship. As a side note, Rick Erickson from Cruise Line Agencies called Sunday to tell us the good news about 2020, and we're wondering what was going to happen. And as far as we know now, Viking we are not on their schedule to come here. So they have presented their schedule. They haven't talked to us yet, I don't think. But there are, a couple other ships that are coming, the Hurtigruten and the Windstar, that are more like 300 to 400 passengers. And Cruise Line Agencies is very sensitive to what kind of tourism we want. They're not going to send Carnival Cruise Lines in here unless they talk to us first. There are obstacles and challenges that we will have to overcome if they do come, let's say in 2021, but why not look at it as an opportunity rather than a brick wall? We're not sure where you got the information about not having enough tours. We've discussed this a little bit, and although challenging, I think we could come up with some ideas to share our town with visitors that would be fun and creative. A lot of people have come to us, and several people in the fishing industry, and to see if they could do something to diversify their boat to add on some tours. Not, they're still probably going to fish, but hey, I might be able to jump in on this and do something with it. Where, as an assembly, do you look to for economic development? We see the increase in visitor numbers as a way to raise revenue through the marine passenger fees through both the city, or the borough, excuse me, I have a hard time saying that, and the state, as well as increased sales tax and harbor revenue. That'll help pay for some of the services that we appreciate here during the winter, our library, our Parks and Rec department, to keep those open for us.
Ms. Berg, that's been 3 minutes. Can you please wrap up your testimony? Thank you.
The downtown merchants, they say that one good day in the summer will help them stay open a week in the winter. So anyway, I did also have in the letter to you the best practices for Juneau, and that's the thing that the PEDC and the Chamber of Commerce is going to work on over the next year or so for our community. So we do what the community wants us to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. And I'd like to add that all the letters that were sent by email, I understand if you don't testify today, Member Mucci was going to want to read them into the record, but even if they don't get read into the record, they will be entered into the record. So they will all be on the Borough website as to people's testimony as how they feel about referring to the letter that I drafted to send to the tour industry. So, anyway, the next person that is wanting to testify, please.
I'll just jump right up.
Sounds good.
I'm Carly Byer, and I'm speaking for myself. I strongly recommend that the Assembly not approve sending the letter to Viking Cruises for the following reasons. To my knowledge, it has never been discussed at the Assembly level before now, except in October when the mayor added it to the agenda to shut it down without any community discussion, but then was withdrawn from the agenda based on community concern that we needed more discussion before a hard no was given. There's been one public meeting and both sides were represented, but in listening to the discussion, there were people both for and against tourism. A strong consensus was not made, which would dictate a letter either way. By adding it to the agenda again, it seems that someone's pushing for this. I think it's important both sides are heard from and misinformation is not being disseminated through the community to sway us one way or another. Community meetings with statistics, facts, and hard numbers need to be organized, not henny-penny worst-case scenarios trotted out as gospel in the coffee shop. I'd like to quickly run down the mayor's proposed letter and refute some of the statements made within. It states, at this point, we don't feel we're ready to handle more than 250 tourists from ships in any given day. Petersburg already gets more than 250 visitors on some days. Back in the early 2000s, we were receiving twice as many tourists per season than we did last summer. We were fine then, and we'll be fine again. We currently lack the infrastructure necessary to handle larger numbers, public restrooms and restaurants. 15 years ago, we had pretty much the same amount of infrastructure we do now. However, the public restrooms issue should have been dealt with long ago. Very affordable and good quality portable bathroom units are available, and I believe the city manager might even have prices on these. They can be easily stored when not in use and brought out not only for the tourist season, which includes Mayfest and July 4th, but also the tree lighting ceremony, Eula bucking, and any time or place more restrooms are needed. This is, hands down, the most prevalent and easily solved infrastructure issue. One main thoroughfare to handle traffic of freight, seafood, and construction materials. Well, it sure is a good thing there are two ways to get to Main Street. I hear Hagen Drive and Sandy Beach are quite scenic that time of year, and AML drivers start mighty early when they need to. Foot traffic. Again, we've dealt with tourist foot traffic before. We deal with it every day with cannery workers. What's the old saying in Petersburg? If you're in a hurry, you should have left 2 minutes earlier. Petersburg is primarily a fishing town and is very busy during the summer months. Yes, we are primarily a fishing town, and that's really a scary thing right now. A fishing town that's in the third year of a down cycle forecasted to last at least 2 more years. In this down cycle, fishing boats don't return every other opening or so like we're used to. I count myself lucky if my husband or my son come to town twice during the season. Boats don't come to town to refuel, buy grub, or replace raincoats, boots, or gloves like they have. That's all revenue that businesses in our community are losing. Your neighbors are losing. Sales tax the borough is losing. We have all of our eggs in one precariously balanced basket. We can't control what the fish do, but we can control what Petersburg does.
Ms. Byer, that's 3 minutes. Can you please wrap it up?
We need to diversify. It won't solve all of our problems, but it will help. Tourism helps local businesses stay in business through the winter, and if we don't start thinking about the bigger picture, Petersburg will atrophy. And you know what will be our epitaph? Petersburg's little Norway. We didn't want to stop for people in the crosswalk.
The next person that wants to testify, come forward, state your name and who you represent, please. And I guess there was 2 people stood up. But...
Race.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Will Ware. I represent myself. I am a small business owner on Main Street. Petersburg is an amazing community, and one that we're all feeling the need of protecting. Our way of life is unique. We're a small fishing community, and we take pride in our way of life. However, it is indisputable that we've been fortunate to have weathered some of the fiscal storms of which the rest of the region has not fared so well from. Yet, it is most recently apparent that we cannot maintain this way of life status quo. Last week, I was listening to the local news and heard of the report for the 2019 pink return, and it wasn't good. I later listened as the Borough Assembly is looking at budget cuts to our schools, to senior meals, KFSK, Parks and Rec, the museum, the Chamber of Commerce, to make up for cuts in state funding. As I follow the discussion regarding the visitor industry, I'm perplexed as to why there's so much extremes when we're talking about tourism. I know of no one in our town, including downtown business owners, that wants Petersburg to become like Sitka, Juneau, or Ketchikan. I work 3 days a week, sometimes 4, sometimes 5, up in Juneau, just to maintain a home and a family here in Petersburg, because this is the place I want to raise my family. And I can tell you, I am the least patient driver when it comes to tourists and crosswalks. I don't like leaving 2 minutes early, but it's a fact of life that we're faced in Juneau. Sometimes it's much more than 2 minutes. Yet, what I like even less, in my own hometown, the place I was born and raised and where I'm raising my family, is wanting to pay more in property tax, pay more in sales tax to maintain this quality of life I've come to love. Without additional revenue to our community, we're all faced with either more taxes or more budget cuts, and more likely, both. Now I understand the Assembly is going to be considering a drafted letter to tell some cruise lines, Viking cruise lines, that they're not welcome at this time until our infrastructure is in place to handle more visitors. Yet in 2006, Petersburg had double the visitors we had this past 2018 season. Our town didn't seem too flooded then, and our infrastructure didn't seem to implode. I would encourage our local leaders to not just be concerned about the what-ifs, but to be concerned more so with the reality of our fiscal situation. You are obligated to be concerned with the economic growth that will bring more revenue to our community to pay for the things that we've become accustomed to. If we want to set a cap, let's set a reasonable cap. But let's have a community discussion to have that cap set. So we talk about sales tax and what it'll do for our community. And I listed off some of those things that the sales tax will do to benefit our schools, to our senior meals, to the museum, to the chamber, to the library. But one thing that we don't discuss, and I feel I'm not going to go into numbers, but I can tell you as a small business owner, the revenue that is generated from our outside visitors in our community in the summer stays right here in our community. It allows us to spend more locally at other downtown businesses. It allows us to spend more at the grocery store. It allows us to maintain a home and a lifestyle right here. And I would encourage you, as we're looking at our young families that we have here, that we so want to encourage to stay here, we better be looking at more things than just our commercial fishing. Our timber receipts are gone. And so I'll wrap it up with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. Anthony, you're next, and then whoever wants to speak after Mr. Tabor, please feel free.
I'm Anthony Tabor, and I just wanted to state my opposition to sending this letter as it's drafted. I don't feel like we're in any position to be turning away business or potential tax revenue. So I just think we should redraft it with some kind of a cap. Nobody wants this town to turn into a Ketchikan or Juneau or Sitka. On the other hand, I've been in Wrangell when their cruise ships are docked, and I'm thinking that they have over 1,000 passenger ships in those towns, and it's not that bad. So I think we should redraft it and welcome them to town with a cap. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Anybody else in the audience that wants to testify today? Chelsea, and then Cynthia, I think that's you back there.
My name's Chelsea Tremper. I'm representing myself, and I'm just here to join the group of people to talk about the visitor industry. But I'm actually going to zoom out a little bit because I see it in two different places on the agenda. So it just seems like right now folks aren't really asking for input from the experts before presenting stuff onto the agenda, and that bothers me a little bit. We have, on the one hand, an almost hostile letter to one company who may not even come here. It doesn't seem like they'll come here, but it sends a message to the larger industry. And then elsewhere in the letter, there's a proposal to raise the fee that has just been instituted on the companies that have been coming here, sometimes for decades. And considering this is a fee that we don't know where the money is going to yet, it hasn't been, it's being instituted for the first time, all of this just feels really premature, and I'm not, I know we're in budget discussions as someone who's on the library board. I'm here wearing no hats, but I am on the library board, and we're really concerned about the budget conversation, but all of this is about taking the longer view, and I see a lot of short view when it comes to the visitor industry. And given that no one who works on the industry is on the Borough Assembly, I would hope that the Assembly would listen to, I'm, again, wearing no hats, but as someone with the hat in the industry, and the many other voices who spoke today, a lot of them are just members of the community, others benefit directly, but really we all benefit directly as we go into Yule bucking season. Where do we think the money those businesses have to spend on the fancy spread that we all enjoy? It's a lot of it local, but a lot of it from the outside visitors as well. And so I'm just asking for a long-term view and a little patience as we institute things we've never done before, as we work with companies. This is about building partnerships, not cutting them off before they can even really begin. And that's the only way we're really going to be building a sustainable path forward. So I just hope you'll take that time to listen to the input as it's given. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any other visitors? I know there's one. And then come forward, state your name and who you represent, please.
I'm Cynthia Matisson. I'm representing myself, but I am the manager of Lee's Clothing. I'd like to state my disapproval of the letter Mark Jensen is proposing to send to Viking Cruise Lines, denying them access to Petersburg. This letter is very negative and will spread rapidly throughout the visitor industry, telling people Petersburg is unprepared for visitors and that they are not welcome. I don't think it is the Assembly's right to limit commerce in Petersburg. We have worked for years to build a visitor business through low-impact, small ship cruise lines, and this letter will have a detrimental effect on that business. We are already getting pushback from the implementation of the marine tax, and we don't know what the future repercussions of that will be. I know of one vessel that has chosen to spend more time in Wrangell instead of overnighting in Petersburg due to the marine tax. It was understood that there would be a working task force to discuss the visitor industry and make a plan for the future of Petersburg. Mark is bypassing this opportunity by writing a letter that speaks for himself and a very narrow range of people that do not represent the retail business community in Petersburg that will be directly affected by this letter. We have a beautiful community that we all care about and want to remain stable and successful. We would like to retain the businesses we have, but in this competitive online retail atmosphere, it is getting harder and harder to be competitive. Do you like Yule bucking? How about the support the business community gives to local sports teams and dance groups, donating money and goods, selling tickets, you name it? The answer is always yes. If you send the message that Petersburg is not interested in the visitor industry, we will have many shops struggling locally. A large percentage of our sales are made May to September, and these sales have to carry us through the year as Petersburg has become so seasonal. No one that I know is interested in the mega ships coming to Petersburg, and that's not what we are talking about. We all enjoy the quality of life we have here. Scare tactics are being used that we will be like other towns in Southeast Alaska if we get a larger boat, and we will be overrun by visitors. The size of boat we are talking about is still considered a small ship. If we take the time to make a plan as a community, we can be proactive in the direction of the visitor industry in Petersburg. Juneau has a tourism management best practices program that works with the city of Juneau, tour operators, cruise lines, and transportation providers on visitor-related issues and resolves problems as they arrive. Give us a chance to create the working task force with the PEDC. It is time we address the visitor industry in a positive way and make a plan for the changes ahead for Petersburg.
Thank you for your testimony. Anybody else in the audience that would like to testify today to items on the agenda?
I wasn't going to read this, but I'll go ahead since I'm here. Hi, my name is Mindy Anderson. I did send this letter email earlier today. Dear Mayor Jensen and Borough Assembly members, I'm writing this letter on behalf of my family and the employees who work at my business, the Salty Pantry. We have had discussions on a regular basis lately about the visitor industry and in particular this letter. It has come to our attention the Borough Assembly is considering a vote to send a letter drafted by Petersburg Mayor Mark Jensen to Viking Cruise Lines requesting that they refrain from booking trips to Petersburg. We are disappointed and disgusted at the notion our mayor and borough would consider such a letter. points brought up in the letter are either unreasonable and unjustifiable or capable of being managed. These opinions are not those of many residents, nonprofits, organizations, and businesses in Petersburg, including Petersburg's Chamber of Commerce. Petersburg cannot and will not survive on one or two resource-driven industries. We must be open to diversifying our economy for the health of this community and all of its residents. Business and individuals who rely on visitors cannot follow the visitor grounds like the fishermen who follow the fishing and shellfish grounds, even to other states, to supplement their income. Whether or not Viking Cruise Line continues to establish a relationship with Petersburg, this type of letter should not be sent for fear of committing economic suicide and sending very mixed messages to our legislatures. Respectfully, Mindy, Rodney, and Evelyn Anderson, and the Salty Pantry employees. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Anybody else in the audience who would like to testify today?
Mayor Jensen and Assembly members, thank you for this opportunity to speak. Mayor Jensen, I've written a written draft, and I would just like to highlight a few parts of this on the record. Mayor Jensen's draft letter to Viking Cruise Lines does not accurately reflect the business community's position on larger cruise ships visiting Petersburg. For a fishing community soon to enter its fourth dismal fishing season, if forecasts are accurate, the Mayor and Assembly need to be championing each economic opportunity and work to pave the way for success in partnership with the private sector. To suggest that Petersburg will be overflowing with people during the summer, as in Ketchikan, Juneau, and Sitka, because Viking Cruise Lines may bring a tour vessel here in 2020, is not believable. The passengers from the ship will be later to town, and so there's little chance that there will be hundreds of people on wave after wave through town. It will be more controlled. Industry sources state Petersburg hosted 8,850 visitors this year. In 2006, our visitor numbers were projected to hit 17,000 in 2007. By 2009, those numbers were down by 10,000 visitors when Cruise West and Sheltered Seas ended their visits. The Mayor and Assembly need to declare that Petersburg is indeed open for business when it comes to the visitor industry. The town is currently operating at less than 50% of the level it was in 2006. A larger ship making 8 port calls in 2020 is not going to overwhelm our private sector services. We hope elected officials will work to grow our infrastructure by providing facilities that private businesses cannot provide, such as public restrooms, trails, parks, that make life more comfortable for locals as well as visitors. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Tremper, you're trying to get up here.
Hello, I'm Bill Tremblay, representing myself. The draft letter to Viking Cruise Line doesn't help our economy. It portrays the community in a very bad light. Several things to this. For one, Petersburg is not a one-source economy. Fishing and processing have dominated much of the economy, but we've had visitors for many years coming into here. And if you look at things like, as was mentioned, Southeast by the numbers, you'll see that in Southeast Alaska, the visitor industry accommodates almost twice as many employees in what they're doing than what the fishing industry does in Southeast Alaska. I mean, it's kind of, why wouldn't you want them to stop shop and look around here? This is a nice place to be. Our infrastructure already accommodates these visitors to some extent. But it's curious to me that we have no problem encouraging people to spend days downtown during Little Norway and the 4th of July and don't think twice about what public restrooms are accessed there. Again, so, and in line with that, as we all been talking about with the aging, I'm including myself in this, of the public here, that it should be a goal that we should probably have better restroom facilities down there in the first place. We have almost 20% considering themselves seniors at this point, not that number's expected to grow. So why aren't we addressing this now rather than have to rely on the private businesses down there to do it for us? The letter kind of ignores what our Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Department have been trying to do. Some of the Assembly members attended a meeting held in November. Several people that were critical of this, of the use of the cruise ship showed up late and missed Dave's presentation, but I understand that some have been backtracking with Dave to find out more information, which I applaud. If you haven't seen the presentation, I ask, why is the Assembly moving on this? Why wouldn't you have the best information to move forward with this kind of a letter saying we don't want you? It seems a little counterproductive and a little bit premature at this point. You know, and as far as the industry's already supporting infrastructure in this town, as noted in the meeting we had on Friday, that close to 30% of the money that was used in the drive-down dock is generated by that kind of an industry coming to this town. So maybe one of my questions is has the industry had a fair access to the dock this last summer? Did they get 30% of the use? And we were talking about just that season, but for the rest of the season, it's open for commercial fishermen. So why aren't they here then, or should we extend their time to double up their time in the summertime? They help pay for it. We should be paying attention to this. I understand that the facility out at the fuel dock were also upgraded with 50% of the money coming from this industry too. The final point is that we need to focus on the borough issues. Throwing out red herrings like what's happening in the with the waterways with waste, or what's happening on the shores with conflicts of use. They should be focused on who manages those, like the federal government and the state. We have representatives, and we can talk to them ourselves about how to address that, and we probably should. I think we can work collectively to do that. But this is a bad letter, and I think it just shows that tells everybody that Petersburg is closed for business. Thanks.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to testify? Mr. Lynch, and then, or whoever.
Somebody have to scramble. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Assembly members. I'm Brian Lynch. I'm representing myself, and I'm addressing item 15F, the letter to Viking Cruise Lines. I submitted a comment letter to you via email that I hope will be read in the record. It opposes sending us this letter, but if you don't read it into the record, it reiterates pretty much what's been said here already. One thing that I didn't put in there is that a concern that I have is just what legislators might think about such a letter. I know if I were a legislator, I would definitely ask the question, does Petersburg support any sort of economic development other than fishing? And I'd certainly be asking myself that question in light, do we want to contribute any state money, the limited state money we have, to economic assistance for Petersburg when we apparently don't want to take steps to diversify and enhance our own economy? This letter, in essence, tells everyone that we're fine just the way we are. That's a bad idea. And, you know, I think I'd guess that there are many communities in Alaska that would love to be faced with this, quote, problem, unquote. Thank you.
My name is Carrie Martinson, and I represent myself. You know, I'm currently own 2 different businesses in this town. And when I read the letter that was proposed, I thought it had a very shut down tone to it. And I thought, have we looked at our community? Have we said, hey, what are your guys' ideas? It seems like there's plenty of time for people to formulate business plans and have these opportunities for growth for more like cottage-type industries. And Petersburg has a really unique individual spirit that I, for one, have gained a great appreciation for, and I think that this is an opportunity to keep that going. And at the current stage in my life, I would love for my kids to be able to formulate their own business plan and maybe live here someday. And I think that this shuts down a lot of opportunities, and I think that a lot of things can be started
started with the idea that I'm going to serve a population in the summer, and then us as locals also enjoy it. And so it stays open throughout the winter, and we have that sustainable tax base. So I just think that looking at business opportunities and how we're inviting our local people to apply for business applications and all that goes with that I know from experience can be really an uphill battle, how we're presenting that, and that instead of just looking at the problems, going, what are those problems and how can we solve those in-house? So, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. There was another person who wanted to standing up on the testify to views related to items on today's agenda, or are we done with public testimony? Any other visitors with views related to items on today's agenda?
I have 5 different member letters to read into the record, so I wanted to go last. The first one comes from Tonka Seafoods, Seth Scrimshire. I understand and fully support our government's role in setting regulations for private businesses to adhere to. I would be supportive of new legislation designed to regulate the cruise ship industry in regards to giant cruise ships visiting Petersburg. For example, I don't want giant cruise ships docking here. I would support a resolution to never build a deep-water port. I don't want cruise ship-owned gift stores taking over our downtown that are closed 9 months of the year. I would support changing the zoning laws in the downtown area to prohibit seasonal gift stores specifically designed to only be open 3 months of the year. However, I don't agree with government officials believing they have the right to tell one individual private company or industry they are not welcome to do business in our community. That's dangerous. It's anti-capitalism. It's wrong. Please take some time to rethink the ramifications of this action. These arguments, used in your letter to tell Viking Cruise Lines they aren't welcome here, are just as valid of an argument against any other private business looking to operate in Petersburg. Your letter could be shown to a seafood company looking to buy the Ocean Beauty plant as proof that our community doesn't want additional people coming to town. It could be used by someone who didn't want a floating processor docked here creating more traffic hauling freight. It could be used to discourage an existing seafood company from adding a product line that would require bringing in additional summer help. If a logging company wanted to set up summer camp to log on the island, someone could show them your letter to discourage them from doing so. Every year, I, Tonka, deal with complaints from very vocal people in the general public about how they don't like seafood employees and deckhands invading our community in the summer. Without any proof of wrongdoing, they blame every littering, loitering, jaywalking, and criminal incident on summer workers. It happens every single year. You would be giving these vocal individuals who don't want these additional people here in the summer a blueprint for how to discourage businesses they personally don't like from operating in Petersburg. You would be showing them that they could petition for Borough Assembly support. When does the slippery slope end? If a group of people don't want a certain business in town, will you back every group or just the ones the current Assembly agrees with? If you pass this letter, perhaps my business will be sending a letter of our own to Viking Cruise Lines. We will welcome their plan to slowly tender people into town while they are anchored in deep waters. I will welcome their plan to exclusively use local businesses to provide activities for their guests and to bring much-needed revenue to our community and borough. We will be sending them a price list of seafood we have available at Tonka Seafoods for them to purchase for their galley. The business we received from cruise ships helped Tonka to reinvest into our own business and keep full-time workers employed during the winter. I will also be asking other local businesses who don't want our government handpicking who is welcome to do business here and who is not, to write a letter to Viking Cruise Lines welcoming them to the community. I have one from Teresa and Pete Lichheim. I'm writing on behalf of the Viking cruise ship letter. We're very concerned that this letter sends a very wrong message that we are not welcoming of private sector business. This letter speaks as though it's from the community as a whole. The Borough Assembly should not be able to make a decision such as this and exclude the business community. As a business owner and member of this community, I feel this letter is a misrepresentation of myself and possibly other business owners and community members. Yes, Petersburg is a fishing community, and I support that and am thankful for our fleet. However, we also used to support the logging industry here, which provided revenue and supported many families, which no longer does. We need to support growth in the tourism industry and not be afraid of it, as it brings revenue as well as tax revenue. Our number of summer visitors is about half of what it was in 2006. We also had 3 canneries running, which brought more people who spend money. That also creates tax revenue. And really, setting a limit of only 250 visitors a day, times have and are changing, and to believe that we could turn into a Juneau, Sitka, Skagway, or Ketchikan is not reality. That simply could not happen here. Viking Cruises is a mid-sized ship, not a large ship. We're not talking about 3,000 visitors or even 1,500 visitors, which Wrangell sees, but 900, which would not be coming ashore all at the same time, and probably not a third at all. Viking Cruise Ships does not buy up shops, which I have heard is a concern for some. This would not be overwhelming to our town, as it has been proven in the past. Summer is supposed to be busy with all businesses. As a retailer, I depend on our summer visitors to get us through the slow winters. I, for one, do not want to see businesses having to close in the winter, or even permanently having to close at all. We cannot expect to not change and still survive. We have supported more visitors in the past. We can and should do that again. We encourage, not discourage, economic development in our town. I have one from Scott Hurt for Papa Bear's Pizza. Petersburg is at a turning point. We have lost much of our tax support for economic infrastructure. We should be encouraging any industry looking to invest in Petersburg. Our last stronghold, fishing, does not have growth predictions. Petersburg needs economic infrastructure growth to keep our social infrastructure in place. A community requires both types of infrastructure to make a great community like we have. I believe at this time our social infrastructure is costing more than our economic infrastructure can support. Are we ready for large growth tourism? I don't know. Will people step forward to supply the needs? I would hope so. Is our town ready to take care of 250 to 500 extra guests one day every week? I don't believe this to be a major concern. Go back a few years to 2013, a record salmon year. How many fishermen and cannery workers walked our streets daily? Hundreds every day. We stayed open later. We hired more people, ordered more food, and did what we needed to take care of business. We also had record dollars to invest in our building and employees longer into the winter. 2018 brought horrible fishing results. Papa Bear's is cutting hours that we are opened, number of employees, and not scheduling any unnecessary work for our homes or businesses. Business is slow. We did not go into the fall with cash reserve. We need economic growth. The cruise industry will not come if we tell them we don't want them. The cruise industry will go away if the businesses don't supply their needs. The Assembly's job is to explore ways to tax tourism, not discourage economic growth. You must have economic infrastructure before you can maintain the social infrastructure we currently enjoy. Thank you. I have one to read into the record from Pacific Wing. Dear Petersburg Borough Assembly Member, we have read the letter that Mayor Jensen is proposing to address to Viking Cruises, and we wish to voice opposition. Talks and meetings regarding the possible future visits of Viking Cruises in 2020 have only just begun to address the issues and concerns. The proposed letter is premature. The proposed letter does not speak for the community of Petersburg. We are a part of a community that strongly believes this may be a great economic opportunity. Many current businesses would benefit from more visitors. It may provide opportunities for new businesses, as well as bring in more economic benefits to our town as a whole. The concern stated in the letter that allowing Viking Cruises to come to Petersburg Port will lead to larger cruise ships coming in is not a valid one. The larger cruise lines with thousands of passengers on board are not going to start dropping in. These are big businesses that take care of their guests, and they aren't going to stop in communities that can't cater to or accommodate them. Other Southeast communities have gone out of their way to bring these large cruise ships in. This is not the issue Petersburg is considering and has no relevance to the issue at hand. Please consider these points and allow talks to continue regarding possible growth in Petersburg's economy. And the last one is from Pete and Sylvie Nielsen. Borough Assembly members, I am writing this letter in response to seeing a copy of the Viking cruise ship letter written by Mayor Mark Jensen. We are concerned about the message this letter appears to send to a business which could bring some much-needed revenue to our city, a city that seems to be floundering in debt. This letter appears that Mayor Jensen is speaking on behalf of all the citizens of Petersburg. Something of this nature should be left up to the people of the community. We are a fishing family and have been an owner of a bed and breakfast for 27 years. Fishing is a huge part of this community, but we also need to support growth in other areas, such as tourism. As far as the town not being able to support the number of people from the ship, I have experienced firsthand that it actually can. I used to work in a gift store on Main Street in the early 2000s, where there was about twice as many tourists coming than we have had in the past few summers. We all want to see this town survive, and I think that more tourists would have a positive effect on all businesses, not just gift stores, but the drugstore, hospital, clinic, the food services we do have, and maybe even encouraging more to open up. All the years I owned the bed and breakfast, people were thrilled to be here, and I would hate to send such a letter that would maybe influence people to avoid this town, now and in the future. We have so many positive things to offer: wonderful hiking trails, helicopter rides, whale watching tours, etc. Hopefully we can share them with more people. Respectfully submitted by the Nelsons.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience with views related to items on today's agenda? So I see no hands going up, so there's no other visitors that want to talk to items on today's agenda. Okay, that agenda item is closed. We're up to visitors' views related to unrelated to items on today's agenda. Is there any views from people in the audience? This is for views unrelated to items on today's agenda. Okay.
Hi, my name is Lizzie Walsh, and I'm the new director at the Clausen Memorial Museum. And I would like to personally invite the Assembly members to come and visit our museum. At the next Assembly meeting on the 17th, I will give a report on our museum, and I think it is important that all the Assembly members familiarize themselves with our museum before hearing my report. In the coming weeks, our museum is having a couple of fun events. On Friday the 7th, our museum is hosting an artist reception for the Women's Invitational Art Show from 5 to 7 p.m. And on Sunday, December the 16th, our museum is having its annual Christmas open house from 1 to 2:30 p.m. There will be music, light snacks, we'll be drawing the winning ticket for the Alaska Airlines raffle, and there will be a silent auction of Christmas ornaments decorated by local artists. I hope that you can all make it. But if you can't, I can set up a time that works with your schedule. I'd love to show you our museum and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for the invite. Is there any other visitors in the audience today with views unrelated to items on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and that's board, commission, and committee reports. There are no reports under item 9. The next item is 10. That's the consent agenda. There's one item on the consent agenda, and that's the renewal of our professional services contract with state lobbyist Ray Matiszewski and Associates. And that, for the people listening in the audience, that is a monthly service which costs us $3,500 a month. I'd entertain a motion to approve this item on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Motion has been made by Member Mucci, I believe, seconded by Member Stanton Greger to approve this services contract renewal. Any discussion? Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess a question for the city manager. How often do we get a report from Ray? Is it a quarterly thing, a monthly?
Pardon me. Actually, I don't generally get a report from Ray. I don't ask for a written report. We talk several times a week, especially when the legislature is in session. We've never asked for one, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. So he has often expressed if the Assembly wants him to come and give a face-to-face report, he's willing to do that. He's not been asked to do that. And up to this point, he just generally works through me and those various Assembly members that actually go to Juneau, and he stops in or has them stop in. So,
any other discussion on this? Member Mucci and then Member Waller.
Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's $3,500 a month. How many months a year do we employ him? Do we do him all 12 months, or we just do it?
It's an annual contract. That's the fee.
Okay. I thought it was just maybe going to be during the legislative session, but okay.
If I may, through the mayor. Often a lot of the work that's done for the borough happens, I mean, the legislative session is kind of wild and crazy. and clearly he's working on things. In the off time, it's usually a lot of follow-up with, particularly at the department level. In other words, working with people like DNR and DEC, the state's, department heads in a sense. And that happens year-round. That's not just during the legislative session. During the legislative session, he's working with actually our delegation, or as well as anybody and everybody he can get in front of, governor's office, finance committees, things like that. So it is definitely something that he's working year-round on Petersburg's behalf.
Thank you. Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It would be nice just to have maybe a quarterly report from him, just about what he's working on. If he's not working on anything, that'd be great to know. But if there's something in the pipeline that we may be paying attention to kind of on a regular basis, that would be helpful to know.
Definitely ask him to do that, as long as the rest of the assembly.
I personally don't see anything wrong with that. I talk to Ray on I wouldn't say a regular basis, but I bet it's probably at least once a month, and he's busy year-round, so it's, and I don't know that you could pay him for 3 months during the legislative session and have the coverage that we need for annual discussion topics. But anyway, any other discussion on this renewal of Mr. Matty Schalski's contract? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to report of other officers, and we have a report from Medical Center CEO Phil Hofstetter, I believe.
Good afternoon. Phil Hofstetter, CEO of PMC. Just a couple of updates, 2 high-level updates from the legislative office. The governor has selected a healthcare commissioner. His name is Adam Crum. The Alaska State Hospital Association has met with him. Relatively unknown in the healthcare field. I don't have much to report on that, but ASHNA, the Alaska State Hospital Association, represents rural healthcare interests, so they'll keep us updated on that. The other aspect to the legislative office with healthcare is a waiver 1115, which is it's a demonstration waiver that helps support some of the opioid crisis and behavioral health needs in the state, and that was passed last week. That's good news for PMC and for the community, as it helps support some of the healthcare costs incurred by substance abuse disorders. So that is a positive thing. I do want to thank the Assembly for their letter to support healthcare professional shortage and medically underserved designations with the state. Since that letter has been submitted, there has been a lot of conversation. Although I didn't get the designation yet, I am working heavily with the state. We've got their attention, which is really nice. So I appreciate that. A couple of things. We had a community health community cafe a couple of weeks ago. It's our first in the series. A few assembly members were there. Thank you for your support in that. It's basically an opportunity to meet with the community, provide some information, and obtain feedback on specific topics in healthcare. So we're anticipating some next cafe next month, and I'm going to provide a summary of that on KFSK this Thursday on those conversations. So just to provide some information. The hospital board approved some funding to engage Dowell, which is a project management firm, to help the discussions with the new facility, and starting with step one, which is space allocation. What are our space needs? And so we're starting a slow process there. We're also looking for additional funding. I submitted a proposal for grant funding to help with some of the master planning on that as well. And that's just going to be an ongoing conversation. I'll keep you informed on that. And that's about it. We have telepsychiatry that's going to be available at PMC, and I'll keep the community informed on that. As we add some of these telespecialty services, we will want some information and feedback from the community so that we know we're meeting their needs. Telepsychiatry is a great opportunity to provide some services here in town that we couldn't possibly either afford or have with psychiatrists, and it's to help the mental health professionals in town, and we'll provide more information as those roll out.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the Phil? All right, thank you, Phil. Thank you, Mr. Report. Next item on the agenda is the mayor's report. It's not a real long report. I have a small report on Alaska Municipal League and the Conference of Mayors. I'll do that at the end. Petersburg Economic Development Council board seat. The PEDC's bylaws state the mayor or mayor's designee from the assembly will be a PEDC board member. I want to fill that seat this year. And also mayor's proclamation of Christmas Eve half-day holiday. It's been a tradition to give the employees a half a day off on Christmas Eve. So December 24th, as usual, they'll get a half a day off. Proposed development code. There's one more opportunity for public comment on the proposed development code, the rezoning, etc. December 17th, consideration of amendments, and the third and final reading of the ordinance will be on the agenda, and that is a 6 p.m. meeting. That's on the 17th. Back to the Conference of Mayors. There was two conferences I attended. The Conference of Mayors was the first one, and then Alaska Municipal League. It's the first time in many years that the Conference of Mayors has a full board of directors. Jan Hill is the president this year from Haines. First vice president is Richard Benneville from Nome. Second vice president is Bryce Ward from the Fairbanks Borough. From municipalities of over 2,500, Joshua Verhagen from Nenana is new to that seat, and I was elected to the seat for a municipality between 2,500 and 10,000 people, and since Ethan Berkowitz wasn't in the audience, he got nominated and elected to the position for over 10,000 people. He's the mayor of Anchorage. Positions that the Conference of Mayors have been taking is Senate Bill 1 needs to be replaced, and according to a conversation that are going along around the state, and Senator Stedman has stated that that will be changed this year, and he wants to the legislature wants to crack down on opioids, so hopefully that will be that'll have to come to fruition. He wants to come to town for a visit, and when he does, he would like to visit with Chief Kerr. The Conference of Mayors has also supported earmarks from the federal government. We talked about the online sales tax. They figure there's $1 billion worth of statewide online sales, and if they could tax it, that could be $40 million in taxes to the state. There was an interesting issue or interesting topic that was presented to us, and it's IRT, Innovative Readiness Training, and I'd never heard anything about it, and other people in the room hadn't either. It's a federal program. It's a military type program, but it will help build programs, infrastructure, and it supplies funds for those projects and on-hands work from the military. Ketchikan, Kodiak, and Kotzebue have already benefited from this program, and I gave Steve the contact information for that so he could keep abreast of it. Another topic that we're all interested in is to keep PERS and TERS, municipalities liability at 22%, and keep an eye on what's going to happen with the broad-based tax, either sales tax or income tax. In the Conference of Mayors, I know Mr. Norheim and Mr. Lynn were there as well. We all tried to spread out and go to different functions. The ones I went to that were interesting, and I've talked about this before, I believe, was the cybersecurity, and I don't know if we've looked into that cybersecurity, but it cost millions of dollars for a Matsu to get out of theirs, but they had the insurance, so that helped. Crime trends are up in the state, down around the nation, but up in the state. and there's no explanation why. It might have something to do with the opioids. They're trying to fill the troopers' positions. Currently, there's 254 hired, 16 more in training, but it's budgeted for 301. So newly elected Governor Dunleavy is going to try to get that fully staffed. Like I said, Stedman said Senate Bill 91 will be a big topic in the legislature this year, and they hope they could make some headway on the opioid crisis. Another issue I brought back, I talked about, I went to a presentation, was on payment in lieu of taxes. There was a lawsuit for underfunding, and that actually passed, and I'm trying to, there was one company, one municipality in Montana that won, and they got their money back. They got paid their money already, and now they're trying to do legislation, and if it goes through, the proposed legislation, Petersburg could potentially get another $96,000 a year. And I know Steve's keeping track of that, but it's a long road to hoe before that happens. The website to look at that, if you're interested in looking for that, is www.headquarterseconomics.org. And that's all I have for the mayor's report, unless there's any questions. Member Mucci.
Thank you. I have a few. Is it possible to get a written report on your travels? I mean, when you ad-lib from some of the notes that you've kept, it's really hard for me to formulate some questions to ask about what was discussed up there. I mean, it's just hard to kind of follow what was going on. If I have them in that packet, the meeting, the week before the meeting, it helps me formulate some questions to ask about the travels and what you guys talked about. I mean, if you just freewheel it off your notes, I guess you can do that, but...
well, I could give you a copy of my notes if you'd like them. Because
that would be great.
Yeah, I could do it. I'll print those out for you.
The other question I have, one of the other questions I have is, Mr. Mayor, is can you tell me how much it's going to cost the borough to give the city employees a half day off on Christmas Eve?
I asked for that figure, and Debbie, do you recall what the number was?
Approximately $10,000, I guess.
Oh.
And so the last question I have, or maybe it's not the last, but so maybe from the Economic Development Director, can somebody tell me what the mission of the Economic Development Council is?
I think if anybody wants to know, they could actually read the bylaws. I mean, I did just read the bylaws.
For an answer at a public meeting.
No. Do you want an answer? I can answer if you want.
Liz, do you have an answer for that?
Actually do, yeah. It's to encourage moderate growth and to still maintain the lifestyle that we have enjoyed here in Petersburg. We actually have a mission statement. That's it, not verbatim, but that's it in a nutshell.
So, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure that you're willing to do that as part of the Economic Development Council. You haven't been part of this council for ever, and now all of a sudden you show great interest on it, and I want to make sure that, while you have the right to be that designee, I want to make sure that you are promoting economic development for the borough of Petersburg.
And if you're referring to the discussion today about the letter that I drafted, if that part of it that I'm not proposing economic development, I am, but I've had many community members come up to me and express concern about that one topic we had so many letters on. And the intent of that letter, and I will just clarify it later what my intent was, it wasn't to stop tourism, it was to have a plan in place before ships started booking trips to Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But we heard nobody today talk about discouraging tourism in Petersburg. I have one letter in here from one person who, and we can talk about later, but you might be hearing a few people talking about discouraging economic development in Petersburg, but I think it's important to remember that if you're going to sit on the Economic Development Council, that you need to be a proponent of economic development in Petersburg. And if you're not the person to sit on that council.
I think we'll end this discussion here, Member Mucci. I will do my best. And if you want to change the bylaws from PEDC so the mayor can't appoint himself or be that representative, feel free to do so.
We certainly can. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions on the mayor's report? Okay, that brings us to the manager's report, unless someone needs a short break.
Back to the manager's report.
Sounds good. Okay. Steve?
Yes, sir. Breakfast with Santa is December 15th at 9 a.m. Please join everyone at Parks and Rec for the fun of watching Santa fly in to greet everyone and take pictures. There will be breakfast pizzas donated by Papa Bears and multiple fun games and crafts tables. Parks and Rec is seeking volunteers to be Santa's elves. If you're interested, please contact Kaylee Thorson at kthorson@petersburgak.gov. Thanks to lots and lots of people. The Christmas tree lighting and downtown decorations are absolutely spectacular. Huge thank yous to Matt Briner and his group of volunteers for putting up the lights, Carl and Power and Light, Chris in Public Works for finding and planting the tree, and Mara from the Chamber of Commerce all did an amazing job pulling everything together. So thanks to everyone. The next Friends of Parks and Recreation meeting will be held on Wednesday, December 12th at 5 p.m. in the director's office upstairs. If anyone is interested in joining that group, you are invited. They're currently compiling a list of projects to focus on for the upcoming year, which will drive the direction they apply for grants and ultimately drive the direction that Parks and Rec goes in the future. Harbor staff continues to work with the Corps of Engineers on drafting the South Harbor dredging feasibility study. They're working to supply the team, the Corps team, with an overview of each vessel in our harbor for the economic portion of the study. Also, the second of 4 in-water surveys was conducted on November 16th through the 19th. The survey team expanded the test sites to include a larger area in Frederick Sound and are working closely with EPA staff, local fish and game managers, and NOAA staff. Again, thank you to Charlie Christensen and his crew for providing an excellent platform for this important work. The reason EPA is involved is kind of an odd. Frederick Sound is under EPA jurisdiction as different than Thomas Bay, which is under state. So Corps of Engineers could have used Thomas Bay to drop the dredge spoils without having to talk to EPA, but the minute it goes into Frederick Sound, EPA has jurisdiction, so we have to go through their set of regulations. So got a little bit more complicated, but the Corps is working with the harbor staff to work through that process. On Tuesday, the 27th of November, Harbor and Piston and Rudder completed the large crane servicing. Lots of this stuff fixed and replaced. Just our thanks to Jason at Piston and Rudder for doing an outstanding job talking to North Pacific Crane and other suppliers to obtain the seal kits, etc., for an aging piece of equipment. We also thank Piston and Rudder for prioritizing this service project and completing it ahead of schedule. Harbor staff has worked with the local police department for impounding a couple of small vessels for non-payment and condition issues this month. Just a big thank you for both the harbor staff as well as the police department for their help. We hosted the Salmon Task Force meetings this past week, bringing in several transient vessels and attendees. Nice shot for the local economy. The borough's contract assessors are in town between the dates of November 27th and December 11th. If anyone from the public would like to meet with them, please call Shannon at 772-5409. Water staff, we recently procured services from the Alaska Rural Water Association to perform a periodic sanitary survey of the water treatment plant and distribution system. It's a 2-day detailed inspection and interview process that is mandated by state statute. It's required to verify that all of our processes and equipment are protective of the public health. The inspection went well with no initial issues to report. The final written report will be received later this winter. We also were visiting Petersburg to perform an annual inspection on backflow preventers on our system. Annual checks are mandatory to ensure public safety. We have to go through that process. Following the outstanding pole replacement in the Muskeg by the line crew at the end of the overhead line, D&D Tree Service moved into the area surrounding the pole damage site and is working to take out numerous danger trees before they come down in the lines in the next windstorm. So thanks to them. Diane Kaplan, the CEO of the Rasmussen Foundation, has contributed an $8,000 CEO discretionary grant to our library's Arts Education Endowment. This comes after John McCabe, founder of the endowment, invited the foundation to make a contribution matching the contribution he made earlier this year. Interest earnings from this endowment support arts education programming at the library. The library did receive a 4-star ranking this year in the Library Journal's annual ranking index. The Library Journal Index rates U.S. public libraries based on selected per capita output measures, checkouts, library visits, program attendance, and public computer use. This is the 6th year since 2009 we've achieved a star ranking. Again, another thanks to Matt Briner for lighting the library up again this year. We do appreciate, and it would be very difficult to get it done without his help and the volunteers. The Decolonizing Alaska art exhibit ended on November 30th. The library is seeking feedback from people who visited the exhibition at talk to the library. They'll give you the exact. The library board is currently reviewing the library's meeting room use policy. The Borough is also considering revisiting our own policies regarding the use of other meeting rooms like the fire hall, assembly chambers, police training room, and the Borough conference room. We've just got to make sure in today's world are we covering costs, particularly for janitorial, when we have big groups here, if we have to bring in extra staff or extra work. So we're going to take a look at it. No necessarily any changes, but we are going to take another look. The late start of winter has allowed us to get some more road maintenance done, ditching, brushing, grading, and pothole repair by Public Works. We are starting to see some freezing conditions. As is customary, Public Works is offering a limited amount of traction sand for borough residents to use on their walks and driveways. Up to 10 buckets of sand per residence may be obtained at no cost from Public Works during regular business hours. Anyone wanting to obtain sand through this program should bring their own shovel and buckets and check in with the front desk before loading any sand. As in recent years, Petersburg Indian Association will be providing snow removal assistance to the borough by plowing some borough sidewalks. The streets crew met with PIA personnel to go over the snow removal routes. Just a big thank you to PIA for once again offering this valuable assistance to the borough. And we did think it's happening early this week. The installation of the new wire tie unit at the baler did show up. Once this is done, we should be able to reduce the backlog of recyclables on the baler floor, and we'll start baling again. That unit is transferable to, or one of the conversations will be, can be used on any new baler that may be purchased down the road, so it's not money wasted. And that's it, unless there's questions.
Any questions of the manager? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, through the to the manager. So, is the person doing the assessors, does he have ID on his car and stuff? So, how does that all work if you see some stranger at the bottom of your driveway looking around?
They do have ID. They drive actually in a Borough vehicle. It's got the Borough insignias on the side of the car, and we can verify that with anybody that needs to. But they drive we provide one of our old reserve vehicles. It's a Chevy Blazer that we keep in reserve and for visitors, and they drive it, and it's got the Borough emblem right on the side of it.
Sure. Mr. Ritchie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank, like Steve said, thank John McCabe. He gave a very generous donation to the library. I mean, it's kind of unbelievable. A lot of us who knew John, refereed with him for a long period of time on the basketball court, and I'm trying to figure out if it's the same guy, but he was quite the artist, and he's donated a ton of money to the library, and it's very appreciated. It's a nice gesture. And the last question I had is PIA responsible or helping the city with the bike path and the walkway out the road?
Carl, I'm going to try to speak to this, or Chris, you're going to need to correct me, I'm pretty sure. The bike path is not the borough's responsibility. That is DOT. There has been back and forth for some time about trying to get PIA's help because they have a piece of equipment that actually would work really well on that bike path. Unfortunately, last time I heard about this is where the two gentlemen in the back can maybe update it, which is DOT had a real problem about using PIA services because of just being the state. So, gentlemen, can you fill in the blanks?
That's about as much as I know right now.
have people like fall off the path or break.
We're not going to banter back and forth here. This has been an issue before. Remember, we've talked about this. The bike path was brand new, and they did it for a while, and the state had an issue with it, and they wouldn't give them permission to plow it. So I guess we could, what would your suggestion be? Write a letter to the state to see if PIA can...
DOT, yeah.
Maybe it'll be different with the new administration.
Maybe.
Is that what you're after? I know it would be nice to have it plowed.
Carl, I know, asked many times, various administrators at PIA asked to try to help, and they were willing to do this. Just absolutely could not get it done with the state. And not being involved in those phone calls, I'm not sure I could tell you why, other than...
Sure.
Does that answer your question? Remember, Richie, about the bike path? Or
Not really, but that's okay.
Maybe if we could send a letter to DOT and ask them if PI can have permission, because it's not good to have people walking on the road on the highway. Hopefully we don't get any snow, but we might. So anyway, with the manager's report being done, is there any other questions?
Just a
Member Norheim?
was that I took some time and went and saw the decolonizing Alaska thing in the library, and I thought it was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, next time there's one, maybe swing by, check it out. For everybody listening.
All right, great. If there's no other questions of the manager, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Hopefully we can all reconvene in 5 minutes. Okay. All right, we'll call the meeting back to order. We're going to call the meeting back to order. I just want to make a little note here that member Stan Greger might have to leave at 3:25, but hopefully the meeting will be done by then. And one other thing I think we should readdress, the borough clerk has found the Assembly Chamber's calendar. Earlier in the meeting, we voted to have the capital projects, etc., meeting at 4 p.m. on the 12th. SEPA has the Assembly Chambers that day. If the SEPA meeting goes like they normally do, it'll be all that day, and then early in the morning on the 13th, the SEPA crowd normally leaves on the afternoon plane. So maybe we should readdress that right now, if that's okay with the Assembly. Entertain a motion to move that meeting to 4 p.m. on the 13th. There's something in the Assembly Chambers on the 11th as well. So those days are taken up. Does that work for people's schedule?
It doesn't for mine, but that's okay. I'm good.
Okay, then Member Mucci, overall here. So is everybody okay with that change?
Mr. Mayor, it'd just be nice if most of us could be here for it. Assembly Member Stanton Greger, is there a date that works better for you, or I'm just trying to sort out, it'd be nice to have everybody here.
You bet, Member Mucci. I mean, to kind of answer your question directly, I'll give you a list of Jay's availability as it is. I could have some flexibility in the 14th. I mean, obviously, like, my priorities are my family, my therapist life, and then this. So the 17th at the regularly scheduled meeting, very comfortable throwing that on there. Other than that, Mondays and Thursdays are tough for me. I can usually allocate time sometimes on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or Fridays.
The reason that I brought up the 13th is because Member Lynn is on the SEPA board, and he will be in town on that day as well without traveling. So that's the one issue. Brandy, does that date work for you, or would you prefer a different date?
Well, I think that makes whatever work.
I guess the other option is to tack it on to the Assembly meeting on the 6th, on the 17th. I don't know what the agenda is going to be like. We're going to be having second readings of some of these ordinances. We're going to have the first readings of today. I guess I only see one ordinance that we'll have the second reading of, so maybe that'll be a pretty light agenda. Member Walter?
Yeah, that would be my preference if we could, because I'll be back by then for that meeting. Today, is pretty much almost nearly an hour was burnt up on testimony. So I think if we did it on a date where there's no testimony, I'll definitely be here on the 17th. So if you would move it to then, I'd be more than happy to participate.
Does that work for everybody? Okay, so
simple solutions.
I'm good with the 17th. I just wanted to remind you all that will be when you will be having the third reading of the development code and making whatever changes might need to be made.
Good point. To brought up that may be a very busy meeting.
Maybe you want to, if you would like to keep it on the 17th, maybe we would want to start at 5 p.m. rather than 6 and add the budget discussion stuff as well. I don't know, just throwing it out there.
Well, 6 of us could be here on the 13th, it sounds like. Does that work for you, Member Walter, or no?
No, that's fine. I don't have to be here. Yeah.
So all those in favor of moving the meeting till...
Wait, can I clarify one?
Yes.
There'll be 5 of us then on the 13th. Right? You're not available either, Member Walhooter? Okay.
Oh, you're not?
Yeah, 5 of us.
No, I'm gone this whole next week.
Okay, let's tack it on to the meeting, start early on the 17th, if that works for this.
Everybody okay with 5 o'clock then?
I may be late, but yes, okay enough.
Okay.
You're in the town anyway.
Yeah, I'll be on site.
Perfect. Okay, so now that we have the calendar, I guess we could have discussed that earlier, but we didn't have the schedule for the assembly chambers. That brings us to new business, item 15. The first item there is an ordinance 2018-20, an ordinance amending section 3.08.120C of the municipal code entitled Assembly Meetings Agenda, to add the Pledge of Allegiance to the agenda and to change the agenda title of visitors' views to persons to be heard. And that is fairly common with many other meetings. So that was a request from a person at our 2 meetings ago, I believe. So entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2018-20 in its first reading.
So moved.
Second. Motion been made by Member Ricci, seconded by Member Lynn. Any discussion? I have one. Go
ahead, Mr. Mayor.
I have one question, Debbie. So the amending it entitled Pledge of Allegiance, is that just switching over to Borough?
Well, it was never in code.
Oh.
So it was just something that got added to our agenda back when, and code was never updated, and I thought if we're going to update the wording of visitors' views, why not throw in the pledge?
Member Stangrager.
Clerk Thompson, can you give some context for persons to be heard versus visitors to be heard in terms of what other communities do?
Yes, I did poll 10 other communities, and no one else used the words visitors' views, so I thought maybe it's an outdated term. There were many, the most common was persons to be heard. There were other options as well, but because it was the most common, I went ahead and grabbed it.
The reason I ask is I remember when the issue was brought up, I know from my perspective, I don't see that as a disrespectful term at all as the speaker had spoken to, but if other communities are using persons, I guess that's fine.
Yeah, it was, of course, it was meant to be visitors to the assembly chambers.
Yep.
But we don't want to offend anyone. We don't want you to feel like you're a visitor to Petersburg if you live here. So persons to be heard, I guess, is just more politically correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on ordinance 2018-20? Clerk, call the roll.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes. Okay, ordinance 2018-20 passes unanimously in its first reading. And that moves us on to resolution 2018-14. This is a resolution extending the Petersburg Economic Development Council's PEDC lease for the community cold storage property for another 5 years under the same terms and conditions. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this resolution. So move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Walter, second by Member Stanton Greger. Any discussion? Liz is here, isn't she, still? So, if I read this right, was the original lease, did it go to 2061? Or was that is it expired and we're renewing it?
5 years from the original, let's see.
It's just like most standard borough leases. It's a 55-year lease with, it's renewed every 5 years, just like almost every other lease, I believe, in the borough.
Okay, so it's just time for a refresher renewal.
I think it was last year, but...
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Brandy?
Brandy?
Yes.
Okay.
Bob?
Yes. Okay, resolution 2018-14 passes unanimously. Now, it's, next item is C, Resolution 2018-15. This is a resolution setting regular Borough Assembly meeting start times to 6 p.m. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Motion's been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Walhooter. Discussion. Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm bringing this up again because, I've struggled with these meeting times at noon. For me, I have to take time off work. I know it's not all about me, but, sometimes I feel that when the meetings are at noon, I don't spend as much time in deliberations at the noon meetings as I would like to, because I always feel like I need to get back to work or I'm taking leave off from work. I've heard from business owners from around town saying that it's difficult for them to take their time off at noon to get here. This morning when we had a whole room full of people, a lot of them were here from their businesses and they left to go back to work. For me, it's easier for me to participate in the summertime, in the evenings, via teleconference to an assembly meeting. It's almost impossible for me to participate in the summertime at the 12 o'clock time. Usually, the way our schedule goes is we're getting back, having lunch and going back out diving at about 1 o'clock. So I just don't have time to participate in the summertime. I know there are some people who will find it a hardship to get to meetings in the evenings, but for the last year and a half, as long as I've been here, I've heard from the business community saying that they would like them in the evening so they didn't have to take time off work to come here. And I realize there are people who don't like traveling in the evening, but I'm putting it out there again, and I'm going to be voting for it, and we'll see how it goes.
Member Norheim, and then...
Well, my understanding was that the first meeting is at noon so that people outside of our road system can come to the meeting and have their views heard. I don't know how many people regularly come from Agassiz or across the way there to come to these meetings, but that's why it was set up that way. When we're here, it's part of volunteering for something and sacrificing part of your time to come to this. And if you lose some time at your work, which I'm sure everybody does eventually, that's just kind of what signed up for. I know I personally would like to have meetings on Fridays so that I could actually be here for them in the summertime. Yeah.
Sorry, are you done?
That's it. Sorry, I trail off.
Member Stanton Greger.
Thank you. Again, sorry. Yeah. Some of you have heard me talk about this before when this topic came up. When you're completely correct, Member Norheim, when Borough formation occurred, it was decided to have one at noon and one at 6 p.m. for several reasons, one of which people outside of Service Area 1 to have easier access during winter hours when it's dark, and also to have people outside of Service Area 1 who might want to participate either and get on the assembly, such as Member Lynn, aren't prohibited from doing so, so not convening at night, a complete hardship. That was the context for that, because nobody's completely satisfied. Like any great compromise, both parties are kind of bitter about it. Some people would like them all the way at noon, some would like it 6 p.m. You split the difference. I like how you said that, Member Norheim, about it's a volunteer thing. For my own personal life, 6 p.m. is much more convenient, but it isn't about me and my life as a business owner. I think you nailed it. I've chosen to volunteer in this role, and what I think is fair for the community is to have one of each. I know a lot of elderly people in the winter when it's icy don't want to drive at night, and I don't blame them. It means they won't be able to come to that one evening meeting. They have an opportunity to participate on a noon one. I think what today shows us also is that if an issue is important enough to any of us, we'll show up. It'll be noon or 6 p.m. For those listening at home, we had a full house today, and I'm really glad because it's better for our local democracy when we have people testifying and participating. And I think that's what today shows us. If an issue is that important, we'll prioritize it and find a way to do it. I definitely can't be supporting this. I think we need to really, really keep in mind our people outside of Service Area 1 and keep that fairness to them. So again, will not be voting for this change.
Member Lynn, you have a comment?
Yeah, I do. I think this is the fourth time now that we voted on this since I've been on the Assembly. But
maybe it'll die one of these years, but with that said, there was a compromise made when the borough was formed, and I think it was a good compromise. And I think that it was a good decision, and I think during the winter months, icy roads and snow make it difficult for residents off island and residents on the road out on Mickoff here to attend meetings regularly. Many seniors are more apt to attend a meeting during the day than at night. I think it's important to provide the continuity and equal access for all our residents, regardless of whether they're business owners or somebody else or whether they're retired. And I support what we have here with meetings both at noon and at night, and I have to vote no on this.
Remember, we're all heard I might as well say something here, seeing how everybody else says. I'm looking at the people sitting in the back there, that come to work every day, and then in the summertime they have to come back at 6 to participate in an assembly meeting. I would just as soon give them a break, because they may not get a pay raise for a while. To be able to show up to show up at noon on a work day. So anyway, I'll be voting no also on this.
Okay, well, anybody that's been here for any length of time knows I prefer the evening meetings, and my main reason is that people that have a 8 to 5 job can't not only participate as a member on a board that has a meeting at noon unless they take time off, which is, if that's your decision, if you want to sign up, you get the position, you have to, adjust your own private schedule. Not only can they not come to the meetings, they probably don't get to listen to them at their workplace, so they're totally out of touch with what's going on with the assembly. So I understand the other point of view about people being able to come from, off island to attend evening meetings in the wintertime. So I'm kind of on the fence, but that's just my input. So is there any other discussion? Not, we'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Okay. Brandy? We lose her?
Are you?
Sorry.
Are you there?
Yeah.
The answer is
So your vote is no?
No.
Okay, thank you.
okay. Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
No.
Bob?
No.
Jeff?
Yes.
Taylor?
No.
Kurt?
No.
Okay, resolution 2018-14 fails with a 5-2 vote with member Mucci and Mayor Jensen in favor. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is E, which is the Petro Land Exchange and potential dolphin project. So I guess what we're looking for here is a motion to...
Please, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The letter of support for reauthorization of the secure rural schools and community
Did I
self-determination.
miss something? Oh, darn it, I thought I was going to get around that. Thank you for correcting that.
No problem, Mr. Mayor.
Correcting that. Okay, item D, letter of support for reauthorization of secure rural schools and community self-determination act. I'd entertain a motion to send this letter of support.
So moved.
Second. Motion been made by member Michi, seconded by Mr. Lynn. Discussion? The only thing I would like to add to this, if it's okay with the Assembly, is we have that CC'd to our federal delegation, our federal and state lobbyists, and I think since NACO, who we're a member of, National Association of Counties, lobbies for this very hard on the Hill back in D.C., I think we should just CC them as well, and then just to keep them abreast of that we're supporting this.
I actually did have a note on this one, was I believe in reading it, it never stated that we were an island, and that maybe we're not just rural, but we're completely cut off from just sending our kids to the next available school. As rural down south might be, oh, well, we'll just send them down the road and they'll go to that school.
I see.
We cannot do that. Otherwise, we'll end up with what we used to do in the old days, where you send all the kids over to Sitka for their whole school year, and then they come back after being there for 9 months. That's...
So are you wanting to add something?
Yeah,
make a motion to...
I figured if you just remind them that we are totally cut off here. There is no other school that we can just go to as far as not securing funding for this.
Is the Assembly okay with adding something like that in there?
Claire Thompson, do you feel comfortable that you could come up with language to represent that?
I'm sure we could, yes.
Okay, then yes.
Okay, all right. So, will the clerk call the roll?
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes. Okay, that passes unanimously to send a letter of support for secure rural schools. The next item, E, is the Petro Marine land swap potential and dolphin project. So I guess we'll entertain a motion to give the manager permission to negotiate this. We have to have a motion on the positive. Is there a...
So moved.
Sorry. Motion made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Nucci. Discussion. Member Nucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if we've done the motion correctly, but the idea here is to, and we can go back and address the motion, but the idea here is to give direction to the city manager to enter into negotiations with Petro Marine for the land exchange for the warehouse that's located just past the Southeast Island Fuel gas station and the warehouse that Petro Marine owns, a block or so down from where they are right now. And included in that is the possible installation of a dolphin at the south end of the Petro Marine dock. We can talk about this just a little bit more, but are we headed in the right direction, Mr. Mayor, with the motion? I mean, I don't want to head down this road and have to come back and...
The clerk had a suggestion that we handled these separately.
Correct.
So, I don't know, and then the managers also sent us an email that said he thought that the dolphin project should be handled first. But, I mean, I don't know, I mean, we can make a separate motion and just talk about the lease first, and then, does that make sense? I think we're discussing them both together, we'd come to a resolution to do both if we voted.
Yeah, if I may, and I don't think it, through the mayor,
right.
I don't think it matters which one you do first, other than we don't have a current dolphin project. In other words, so I need some guidance from the assembly. Does the majority of you want to create a dolphin? Because then that becomes part of the discussion with the Petro folks. So that's where it's coming from. So if you want to approve moving forward with Petro first and then talk about the dolphin or vice versa, it doesn't really matter to me. I just need direction from four of you on whether or not, when I sit down to talk with them, if I do sit down, I know whether the dolphin is on the table to talk about or not. That make sense?
It does. Which brings up more questions. Remember,
I screwed up. I mean,
no. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
But we need the motion stated correct.
Sure. And so, I'm just trying to sort out what's the best way to go here. Do I put a motion for a preliminary approval to fund and construct the berthing dolphin project using Petronet's proceeds, or should we just talk about the whole idea as a group? I mean, what is easier to deal with? That's what I'm just trying to sort out.
So, just to back up a little bit, do we have a motion and a second on the floor?
I didn't hear the motion. What was the motion?
Member Stan Gregor, you were the maker of the motion?
Yeah, it was to, let me grab my reading glasses here, to authorize the borough manager to enter into negotiations with Petro for land exchange and potential dolphin project.
Perfect.
Is there a member Mucci you seconded? Are you good with the second on that proposed motion?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, now that we know what we're discussing, let's continue with the discussion. Member Lynn, you had a...
No, I was going back to a point that Jeff and
okay.
Member Mucci made.
Good, Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been kicking this can down the road for like a year and a half since I was put on, originally appointed to the assembly, and then to me it just seems like it's a win-win-win situation for the community. I hate to use those type of terms, but for me, what it does is it frees up parking space in the North Harbor. It gets rid of 3 or 4 or 5 crappy containers that are falling apart and storing equipment that the harbor guys use on a regular basis. It frees up space in the area behind Alaska Commercial Electronics with the same type of trailers. I mean, they're just falling apart. The doors, if you go try and open the doors are about ready to fall off. And we have equipment in there that we are expected to take care of our fleet in our harbor. We've got 3 harbors that we depend on. You know, we're talking economic development. Well, we got to take care of the boats in the harbors and the harbors. The building that Petro owns meets our needs. It has a pretty much dry storage area. There might be a few issues that need to get dealt with. I think we've all read the environmental assessment of the area. I think there's probably concern that who picks up any liability if the borough purchases a piece of equipment that might have some soil that needs mitigation, but I think we can deal with that kind of stuff. There are lots next to the warehouse that the borough could use for storing, whether it's equipment or whatever. There are spots up above that, you know, the neighbors have expressed concern about that we can take care of that kind of stuff. This is part of the long-term plan for the harbor department. This meets the needs. This is not building a new structure to house the harbor stuff. I mean, we have a building that's ready to go. I've been in and out of that building more times than I want to be. I have a lot of respect for Gloria Ann, the harbor master, and the guys that work down at the harbor master shack, and they are doing a good job. They are very efficient. They, and I think it's important to remember that we have a good business partner with Petro. I mean, they do a lot for the community, and they help us out a lot. I mean, people might not understand that, when the cruise ships are in the summertime, and the cruise ships are tied up to that Petro dock, it's inhibiting Petro from doing commerce there. And the addition of this dolphin south of the dock would help us move, or help somebody move, the ships south of the Petro dock so Petro can still continue to do business. And I've told people many times that I wish I had another drive-down dock. We all probably get the same conversations from fishermen wishing the cruise ships' docks wouldn't be there so people could get in there uninhibited. But we don't. And this possibility of a dolphin south of the Petro dock would help relieve a little bit of the congestion at the drive-down dock. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Member Stan Greger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for the manager, if I may, sir.
Yes.
Steve, I think for people listening at home and maybe for members of the Assembly too, kind of walk us through what this means. So we give you permission to enter into negotiations, et cetera, as per the motion. What does that mean in real-life terms? Of what will you be doing? What does it mean as far as what we're giving you permission to do? It may seem rhetorical, but please.
Okay. Once I get a few more questions answered by the Assembly, in assuming that you approve this, we'd go in executive session later so I can answer some questions that are pertinent to negotiating with Petro. I would then meet with them, their representatives, to talk through the details of an agreement. We have an ordinance that outlines how a land swap like this can be done, sure. But there are some issues that are left up to the Assembly and or the negotiations that occur as part of a land swap like that. So if it went through, Petro would deed over the warehouse we're talking about and the land around it, and in return, Borough would give ownership to property that Petro is currently leasing from us. 6, 7 lots. I'm sorry, I don't. That are adjacent to 7. Yeah, okay, thank you. And then instead of paying us an annual lease, Petro would pay full value on property taxes on those properties. We would stop receiving a lease payment and the warehouse would come off the tax rolls as being owned by the borough. So, again, kind of a very involved process. First step is the Assembly giving me permission to negotiate with Petro, and also then answering some questions that will likely come up in negotiations.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. That was a piece that I'd heard several times on the street. Well, what does this mean? And I think you phrased it succinctly by saying, give me permission to start the negotiation. And negotiation is complex, and this is the part of that process. So thank you for clarifying that for folks listening at home.
Member Lynn or Member Norham, do you have a comment?
I was just reminded of the, up at the AML conference, that they had talked about a new rule coming down, or law, stating that leases were about to become much more expensive, and it may actually be, it seemed to be pushing municipalities away from leasing things and instead purchasing or selling and no longer leasing. So I guess I'm in support of it because it could potentially become much more expensive just to lease the land.
Okay, any other, Member Lynn?
Yeah, I've looked at this probably more than I care. I even stopped today and took a look and walked around there. I've still hung up on the cost because I see the cost there. When I looked at it again today, I think you're looking at, to bring that building up to a point where we could really use it, we're looking at somewhere between $150,000 to $200,000 by back of the envelope figures. And I'd asked Go earlier for how they intended to use it and so forth, and that's what I was basing this on. And so when I look at that, and I look at then, I think there's a figure there that they gave us of $300,000 to build a new facility and put it on borough property. Seems to me that would be closer in, would be probably a better way to go. So I can't support this. I do think we need new. The harbor crew needs a better place to work. And I think we do need to clean some things up. There's no question there. It's just a matter of how we do it.
Any other discussion? I have a question for the man. Brandy? Sorry. Go ahead, Brandy.
Yeah, I was just coming in late. I just like to kind of reiterate what Bob was going to say. We're having a hard time with the numbers, too. And even then, I don't think that the Harvard crew needs a building to work out of, but the numbers just don't seem to be crunching. And like Bob said, I think that building's going to need a lot more work than we have. I think it'd be better just to build something somewhere on our land that we currently have. So I don't think I can support this either. Thanks.
Thank you, Brandy. Member Walhoder.
Steve, I just wanted to just clarify one thing. Jeff mentioned something about if we have soil contaminations or whatnot, we could deal with that. There's no such thing at this point. I mean, after reading through the 21 pages of this report, it's been remediated and gotten a clean bill of health, so there won't be any of those issues if we go through with this, so thank you.
Okay, Member Mucci, you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it's not just a building for the harbor guys. Petro would like a piece of property that would clean up what they have. They want that piece of property. We're looking for a piece of storage for our harbor equipment. If you're concerned about it, it's going to take $100,000 or $200,000. I mean, I'd like to see what those numbers, what that means. I mean, they can walk in there and store their stuff there and in a controlled manner, kind of upgrade that facility to make it what they want. But I don't think anybody, or I'm not under the impression that the harbor guys are going to go in there and say, we need $150,000 or $200,000 to make this thing doable. I mean, for me, I'm past the new building stage in Petersburg. I think we've seen plenty of new buildings in town. Some of the ideas of putting a new building on the ramp going down the drive-down dock is going to take away from rental property that the borough has. I mean, you can say no to this building or no to that building or yes to this building, but here's a plan that Planning and Zoning has approved twice. The second time they approved it, they wanted to know why it was before them. They thought it was behind them. The Harbor Advisory Board said, yeah, this is a no-brainer. The harbor master says, what's the deal? They have the money to purchase this and make this thing happen. I mean, I don't understand what the heartache is. I mean, if you think that you're going to get support to build another new building to house something in the harbor, I think it's going to be a tough road to hoe. I think the Harbor Department has done their job, the Planning and Zoning has done their job, Harbor Advisory Board has done their job, and I think it's up to us to just take their recommendations and move forward with it. Instead of, if we don't move forward with the recommendations from the Planning and Zoning of the Harbor Department, then why have those commissions? Thank you.
Member Waller. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify for the public that's listening too that this is not any money that's coming out of the general fund. This will be coming directly out of the harbor fund. So this is an enterprise fund. They've planned on, finding at one point or another a storage building or a place to put all their stuff, because it's unsightly right now. And so this is something that they planned for, and this is something they feel like they can afford. So I'm not that I agree all the time with Mr. Michi, but I'm going to be voting for this because, it doesn't mean that we're stuck with this. If it becomes an albatross, we can always sell it. If we build, maybe we'll build a better building on the property that comes with that facilities, build a new thing there, and then lease out that building to somebody else. We're not making any new land. And so, anyway, that's why I'll be in support of this.
Any other discussion?
In one of the letters we got on suggested that we go back and take a look at the remediation part of that. And I think that if whatever we do, if it passes, that has to be, I think the point that was made in that letter needs to be followed up on.
What's in particular?
It's in the planning and zoning letter. And one of the comments was, I believe that we need to follow up on some more.
Which would be a discussion matter for executive session if this was so approved.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's already in the. I was going back to a point Kurt made, that there is a point in there that was suggested to us by planning and zoning.
Mr. Mayor, would it be inappropriate to ask the representatives that own this property about what the true condition of that land is? Because what I read was that it's already been remediated and they've been given a clean bill of health. Is it inappropriate now to ask a representative for that?
Yeah, you can ask, but I think the documentation you should use on that is the report we got back from the people that did the cleaning and said it was environmentally clean.
Yeah.
Personally, right. So it's stated that it is. So.
Right. Well, that's the way I read that too. So I don't quite understand why there's a concern for remediation right now with contaminated soil. So thank you.
Member Michi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion and the second, this discussion is just giving the city manager permission to enter into negotiation with Petro. We'll be adjourning into executive session later on to bring up some of the concerns that we have. And I think those concerns, it could be legit. But those will be the things that will be discussed between Steve and Petro 49 to sort it all out. Steve is not going to sign on the dotted line and we're going to get that property in the next 2 weeks. This is a process that goes on for quite a while. One of the sticking points is the 30-month thing. But I think those guys can sort that out. I don't want to sort it out right here. And I think what we're trying to do is give the city manager direction to enter into negotiation with Petro for the land exchange and sort out the dolphin thing as part of it. That's my impression.
Any other discussion? My opinion on this is I've got some issues with it. We've got an old building, 38 years old. At one point, I brought it up that we should have it structural analyzed or inspected by a professional, and we did have one of our staff look at it and said it got a clean bill of health. But one of his comments was, the roof looked okay, but I looked at it from the road. I said, well, that's not a very close inspection in my mind. So I'm concerned about the condition of the building, and when Member Lynn says he just walked around and to get it up to the standards that the harbor's looking at, it could potentially cost $150,000 to $200,000. And there's no cost, engineering fee or cost, what a dolphin would cost, what it would actually cost us. There's no current cost projection on that project. And in this land swap, if it was to go through, we'd get $125,000 from Petro. I believe that's the number if the values of land stay the same. But that's only good for 30 months. And if we don't come up with, complete the dolphin within 30 months, which isn't much time, then they get their money back. Another statement the manager made, don't people that pay leases, that lease land, don't they pay the full property tax on the property? Or am I
They pay property tax on the improvements they make. So
not on the land.
Not on the full,
No, they pay property taxes on the land as well. Possessor.
Okay, so that's not that answers my question there.
So just to clarify, the loss in property taxes, if this transaction was to happen, would be $4,000 a year. And then the loss of harbor lease revenue, the harbor is $28,500 a year.
That's a $32,000 loss, and if we were to build a new building, you could use that lease fee to build a brand new building. And I'm not disagreeing that the harbor staff, now that we own all our harbor facilities, the state turned them over to us, they don't need a building. But if you built a brand new building, I've been looking at buildings for my own business, you could get some metal buildings that have a 50-year warranty on them, instead of looking at a building that, you're going to have to look at modifying. So just, with those concerns I have at this point, even if it's starting into negotiations, I'm not in favor of this land exchange, so I'll be voting no. Is there any other discussion? Member Bucci.
Thank you. It's not really a discussion. When I have all these details running through my head, and I've been dealing with this since last October or whenever, I have to write this stuff down so I understand. And I only understand the stuff that I read from the city staff. I look at the soil sediment, I look at the square feet, who does what, who owns what. That's all we can do is kind of go on facts. Some of them can tell me he thinks it will be $100,000, but I don't know. This may be true. I know in 2011 there was a report that came out that was going to cost us $217,000 to put that dolphin out. I know that. I know that.
Debbie's going to get you close to the microphone so people listen.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if everybody does. I know that when the Drive dock was built, that $3 million of it was paid for out of the visitor industry. That's part of the deal. I know there's some, could be, I don't think there is, but liability from the soil stuff. There's 7 pieces of property here. The building's here. There's 2 spots right here, and there's spots for leasing stuff. Coast Guard dock is here. Petro dock is here. That's going to help. Part of the negotiations is going to be to talk to the Coast Guard to see if this dolphin is going to impede their traffic. This warehouse is right here. In 2012, it was valued at $28,500. We have all this old info, and we're talking about if Mary wants to build another new building, that's great. But I think we have fatigue at new buildings. We have a building that we could use. It's right here. It's right here. It's got dry storage. It'll need some work, but that's fine. We can sort that out. We want to take away from storage area here for the commercial fishermen. We want to take away some of their spots. Well, I guess that's what we can do. But Petro would like this warehouse. We would like this warehouse. I don't understand what the mix is here. I don't understand why it doesn't work. We'll get a new appraisal on this piece of property. And we'll get a new appraisal on this piece of property. And in the negotiations, we'll sort out what it's going to cost to put this stuff in. If it looks like it's not going to work, we don't have to go forward with it. But to say we're not going to do it just because you want to put a new building up and whatever, we have, we're talking about recycling, reusing. We have a building here that we can use. But
without building a brand-new building. This building here, the cold storage, it's in the process of maybe going away or shutting down. It's hard to say. But to put another new building in here and taxing the building owners, and we have the money to do all this. It's not like we don't have the money to do it. But right now we're in the preliminary stages of negotiating with Petro and the Borough. And we shouldn't be afraid of that. We shouldn't be afraid of economic development. This meets the needs of our economic development for our Borough Harbor. And if you're not in favor of that, then you better come up with a better idea, because this is an idea that's been around for quite a while, and I just want to see it go. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on this, giving the manager permission to go into negotiations with Petro for this land swap dolphin project? Member Norheim.
So this is just negotiations, and negotiations can fail, right? So this isn't just we're doing it, it's just talking about it. Okay. Okay.
Any other discussions? Clerk, call the roll.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Brandy?
No.
Bob?
No.
Kurt?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes. Okay, this motion passes with a 4-3 vote, with members Lynn, Marole, and Mayor Jensen opposing it. So this will put us into an executive session later in the meeting to discuss negotiating strategies, and there might be more than one executive session as the process moves forward when we get new information that the manager presents us. So, all right, that brings us to the next issue on the agenda, and it's a letter to Viking Cruises. And I'll entertain a motion to go through with sending this letter. So move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Walhuter, seconded by Member Mucci. Discussion. And with all the testimony earlier, it was pretty overwhelming that the businesses and people from town suggested we did not send this. My reason for drafting this letter was because I thought there was a potential of a bigger cruise ship coming to Petersburg in 2020. And with that being said, I would imagine and I don't know how they book their passage, but maybe within, I don't know if they do it a year ahead of time or whatever, I was concerned that we should take some kind of a position to set a carrying capacity for Petersburg. And now I understand PEDC has has formed some kind of a working group to come up with a draft plan for the tourism industry in Petersburg. I think that's great, and I look forward to being part of that. But I think the public totally isn't in favor of this growth. I know we need economic growth, so my reason for sending this letter was not to say don't come. Let us figure out what we can handle as a community for carrying capacity and what we need for infrastructure to provide the correct services. And as far as the worry about the potential of this opening up for bigger cruise ships, I mean, I've seen it happen all over Southeast Alaska, and I know none of us, like it was stated many times in many testimonies today, want to see Petersburg turn into a downtown Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway. So anyway, I'm just trying to explain myself a little bit why I put this letter on the agenda. And one comment today by one of the people that testified was that in October, when I put it on the agenda as a discussion item, that I wanted to shut tourism industry down. That is in no way, shape, and form what I'm interested in doing. But I am concerned with the impacts that large tourism has on the environment in Southeast Alaska and communities and the way of life. So that's my 2 cents and try to explain why I put this on the agenda. Any other discussions? Clerk, call the roll.
Let's see.
That was he pretty much covered it, sounds like.
Any other discussion? Member Walhuter?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, for putting this on the agenda, because I think this is a discussion that we need to have as a community for sure. I've talked to several people, and I think we need to to come up with an MOU. I think we need to come up with, what we are willing to accept, because we are in the driver's seat. I don't know what Liz has got going, because I haven't talked to her about this issue, but I think there's a way that we can kind of have our cake and eat it too without being overwhelmed, and I think this would be premature in my mind to send this letter to Viking right now. I think we need to flesh it out a little bit more before we send them some kind of response. So anyway, I won't be voting for this because I think we need a lot more discussion on what we're willing to accept and what we need, and I'd really like to see Viking get involved in this too, because we only had just a few members meet with them when they came to town, but I would like them to hear exactly what this community's concerns are, because they may very well say, well, we can't meet that criteria, so we're not coming. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Member Norheim?
So, obviously there wasn't a lot of people here who were opposed to the ship coming in, and pretty much everybody who decided to show up who was concerned about it was for it. So, I mean, how opposed is the public to it really when they didn't even bother to show up? I can see that, but yeah, it sounds like we got a year. They already said that they're not coming in 2020. So in the middle of, we're still having another scheduled meeting apparently with them this month, I believe they had said. So I don't know. I think maybe we should wait on sending the letter, or maybe amend it. It was not out of line, especially since we don't have to worry about, crunching to get, say, more bathrooms or more business plans for 2 years. Now we have 3. So we have some time now, I think.
Totally understandable. Member Stan Gregor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With all respect in saying the letter doesn't say don't come here, it pretty much does, saying we don't feel we're ready to handle this. That says don't come here, with the fairly arbitrary number of 250 people, which several people spoke of today. And we've handled that more than 10 years ago. When canneries were running full-time, we had more than that amount of people walking around the streets. Some really good things were said today by a lot of people. I think one that jumped out at me the most was Cynthia Matisson. She pretty much covered every base. Most importantly, I think, this letter feels very isolationist, saying, well, we want some people here and some not. And some people spoke to, and Ron Lesh in particular mentioned it in a letter that I read. I really don't think it's the role of government to make this decision. This letter strikes me as a government overreach. I know on my role in the Assembly, big sticking point for me is I don't want to say who can do business and who can't in the borough. Like, somebody who wants to open another marine shop. Well, we've already got 2, we shouldn't allow that to happen. That's not our role as the Assembly. I don't want to be thrust into that role either, decide who can and cannot do business in our borough. It's grossly inappropriate for us to be the decision makers in that role. That said, I think it is a community-wide discussion as far as how we move forward with that, as many people spoke to, and that needs to play itself out apart from the Assembly. I don't want us to be the legislators of who's allowed to get a business license and do commerce here, and I really implore my fellow Assembly members to vote no on this letter today. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Member Lynn?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Member Stan Gregor. But I sat through that meeting that we had here a few weeks ago, listened to both the pros and the cons. And I've read, I think, most of the letters that came to us. And I really think there's some really good things. I think that working group needs to continue. I think there needs to be a systematic approach that we go through and that we glean out of those letters, both parts of it, and we address them, and then have a community discussion. We've got to come to some kind of agreement, because we're going to have further requests. We're going to have more people that want to come. And I think that this really does this whole system needs to continue to come to some resolution. If it takes a year, let it be that. We have time. And so I'd vote no on the letter.
Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There were several letters that didn't get read. There were 4 of them in support of the businesses in town and not sending the letter. There was one from Katie Troutman, one from Grace Wolf, one from Joyce Cummins from First Bank, and another one from the Somervilles, Tanya Somervilles. But the only one in opposition we had was from Ron Bushman, and that's the only letter I have seen, or the only correspondent I have seen of somebody who is against those ships coming to town. Back in the early 60s, when my wife's family came to town, they were loggers in Southeast. And there was a big brouhaha that loggers are coming to town. They didn't have houses, so they were living in trailers, and they were called trailer trash. But that industry carried Southeast Alaska for 30 years. And fishing was kind of going through, changes that, as years went on, the timber industry kind of went one way, and commercial fishing kind of came up. I mean, this town is never going to be not known as a town that fishing built. This is the town that salmon built. This is it. We are fortunate that we have people in the visitor industry that want to come here and spend money in Petersburg and not really make a big impact to the community. I mean, people are concerned about a couple hundred people being downtown Petersburg. Well, are we going to start limiting people that come from Little Norway? And for a lot of us, we're not here in the summertime. The mayor's out fishing. Assemblymember Norheim's out fishing. We're not here. I mean, I understand the concern of the community, but we only have so many things, so many economic drivers for this community. And if you start sending the word out that you're not welcome here, like it was mentioned earlier in some of the other letters, and, the legislature's going to pick that up, and they're going to say, well, if Petersburg doesn't really want to encourage economic development, I'm not going to help them get what they want. I'm voting against this. I think it's a real bad precedent that the mayor is authoring a letter that he's trying to send out. What really bothers me is it bothers me that the mayor is saying this in our small town. It really bothers me what you might be saying to other community members around town, in Southeast Alaska, and in some of the meetings that you go to. I mean, when I was the mayor of Petersburg, I was the #1 cheerleader for this town. #1. Petersburg was always open for business.
I don't think this discussion is about the quality of the mayor. Mr. Michi, can you please stay on task and discuss the letter? Thank you.
But I think the responsibility of the Assembly is to put forward a good foot for Petersburg. We are open for business. If we're not open for business, then we might as well just shut down and, hopefully things will work out for themselves just because. But that isn't how it happens. We have to be proactive with the business community. We have to be proactive. We have to be looking 5 years down the line to sort things out. And if we're not willing to do that, then we shouldn't be up here as Assembly members or the mayor. Anyway, thank you. I'm voting not to send a letter.
Yeah, just one brief addition, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I'm glad Member Michi touched on that. Ron Bushman had wrote a letter in opposition, and Sud and Member Haverlich, former Assemblyman Haverlich, came forward in opposition today, or in favor of the letter, excuse me. And I know speaking for myself, those are two people I respect quite a bit, and I look forward to working with them to see what we can come to. These people have formulated their opinions from a very strong place, and I'm glad to be part of the challenge moving forward is incorporating those opinions so that we can find a workable solution for Petersburg. That's all.
Okay, is there any other discussion on the letter? Clerk, call the roll.
Taylor?
No.
Kurt?
No.
Jeff?
No.
Bob?
No.
Brandy? No. Jay?
Nope.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, that fails with a 6-1 vote, and we will hopefully have more public discussions and determine what direction we want to go. Next item on the agenda is G, a SEPA board appointment. We have 3 people for 2 seats. There's a voting member. That seat is currently held by Member Lynn. There's a alternate, and that position is held by John E. Jensen. And then Robert C. Larson, who has been involved with the Southeast SEPA and Thomas Bay Power Authority for years, has put in his letter of interest. So the way we've done this in the past, well, the most recent way we did this last year was I entertain a motion to appoint somebody, and if there's a motion made and then a second, we vote on that person and move forward to the next position. Does everybody understand that? And that was the method that was that we should use came up with the attorney. Am I correct on that, Debbie?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so let's, we'll start with the voting member, and I'd entertain a motion to appoint Bob Lynn to the voting member to the SEPA board.
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made by Member Bucci, I believe?
Yes.
Seconded by Member Stanton Gregor to appoint Bob Lynn as the voting member for the next year to SEPA. All those, call a roll.
Thank you.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes?
Kurt?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes. Okay, that passes with a 7-0 vote. And now it's for the appointment of the alternate for the next year. And I would like to entertain a motion to appoint John Jensen as the alternate to the SEPA board. Is there, for the next year, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second to the motion? Okay, motion's been made by Member Norheim, seconded by Member Marole. Any discussion on that? Clerk, call the roll.
Bob?
No.
Jeff?
No.
Kurt?
Nope.
Mark?
Yes.
Brandy? Jay?
No.
Taylor?
Yes.
Okay, then that fails, so Mr. Jensen will not be the alternate to the SEPA board, and I'd entertain a motion to appoint Robert Larson. So move.
Second.
Okay, motion been made by Member Walhitter, seconded by Member Rucci. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Brandy? Mark?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes. Okay, welcome aboard, and I guess there's a meeting here in town, Christmas party, SEPA meeting the 12th and 13th. The 13th, yeah. So that moves us on to H&I, but we voted to put those, I believe, in the meeting on the 17th. Isn't that what we finally decided after a couple different debates? And communications, there's a letter from John Haverlich, and I don't know that we need to read it because he touched on it earlier. He just wanted to just keep this in mind during the budget that we should cut some senior services, and that I'm sure we'll hear again at a future date. Assembly discussion items is next, item 17, recognitions. Are there any recognitions by staff or assembly members? Member Walhitter.
Yeah, I would, there's something I've been noticing here recently, and I just want to commend those seniors that have chosen to pay city sales tax. I mean, I've seen more than one, pay for it, and I really appreciate that, and I'm glad that they're taking that opportunity to step up without being forced to step up. So anyway, glad to see that, so thank you.
All right, that's great. Any other recognitions? Okay, that moves us to item B under assembly discussion items. It's a marine passenger fee increase, and Mr. Norheim, Member Norheim brought this up put it on the agenda for discussion. Mr. Norheim, do you have any direction you'd like to go?
Well, I understand that this was just passed this summer, I believe, and that it was set at $5 for the town. And while I was up at the AML conference, I had brought that up, and the feedback I got was because we don't get any of the state money from the green passengers fee, that we've literally not had any head tax, or I guess you would call it, from all of the cruise ships up to this point, and we're just starting out at $5. I was told that $5 is massively underselling our town. People want to come here, and the type of people who want to come here are are not going to scoff at having to pay more money to get here. I had originally thought $25 was not too much to ask. Thinking about it, I probably settled more on about $20 a head, a person, just because when you go to the ATM, it just gives you a 20. I mean, are you really not going to go to a town because it costs you $20? I mean, there are literally just bars, some places that cost you $20 just to get in the door, and we have a whole town, and they want to come here. I mean, you're not asking them to go broke to get here. It's $20. They spend a lot of money on these tickets already. They're, here. It's not, I don't think it's unreasonable.
Okay, that would have to, for us to take any action on it, be put on a future agenda as an action item, but yeah, thanks for your discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That all sounds great. We'd like to get more money from the cruise ships, but I guarantee you they are going to be in your face when it shows up. I mean, we have been struggling with the $5 thing, and you would think that you were asking them to donate an arm or a leg. I'd be willing to help you see more fees coming in from the visitor industry, but it was a struggle. The $5 thing was a struggle, and is a struggle, and will continue to be a struggle as it gets implemented in 2019. But I'd be more than happy to help you with that if you need some help.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Do you have more to add to that, Taylor?
Well, I know these costs are forwarded to the passengers, so they are not losing money. So when they sit there and whine and complain that, oh, we have to come up with more money, maybe they don't have to do it right away because obviously tickets have already been sold and they don't want to cut into their profits, and I can totally understand that. But future tickets increase, sure, it's $15 more than 2 or 3 years ago whenever they had to buy the ticket. They are not going to take that hit. They're going to forward it to their passengers. So, I mean, they can whine and complain all they want, but they're not going to hurt their bottom line. And the passengers are not going to care for another $15. Nobody's going to not go on their Alaskan cruise because it cost $15 more.
So I guess and the tourism is going to be a big discussion we're going to be talking about for forever probably, and how we can, as a community, make sense of it where it's going to pay for the infrastructure that we're going to be asked to provide if more people start coming to town. So at some point we'll have to address this again. Member Stan Gregor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I mean, speaking for myself, I look forward to seeing how this next year of collection at $5 goes, and we can see how it plays out. I mean, the idea of increasing it at this point doesn't have any appeal to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on this topic? And we can discuss it again if the person feels like we need to have more discussion in the future. Brandy, do you have any input? Okay, thank you. Thanks for hanging in there. All right, next item under Assembly discussion items is C, electing Assembly members at large versus designated seats. And I believe Member Mucci asked to have this discussion?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was a request from former Mayor Don Koenigs and former Assembly member John Hogue. They have an idea about, instead of having 5 people running for 2 seats on the Assembly, maybe having designated seats. And Don was supposed to be here today to talk about it, and the idea was just to have this on the agenda for the December 17th meeting. So I'll wait till they show up and we can go from there.
Well, yeah, that'd be good to have their explanation. I did read their letters, and Member Stan Gregor?
Yeah, I was thinking about that in a comment. One of the comments that John Hogue and Mr. Koenigs commented on was the idea of people not wanting to, only vote for one person because of that. And I can speak to that. Member Wohlhuter and I are on the same docket, and Kurt does a good job, but I'd be voting against myself to vote for Member Wohlhuter, so I end up voting for myself. And anything that decreases voter turnout or depresses democracy, I think, is worth discussing further, because I would be voting for Kurt otherwise. He does a fine job. And I've heard other Assembly members talk about that. Well, I don't know, I want to vote for this person because they do a good job, but I got to vote for myself, because you could be voting against yourself. And those anecdotal stories that Mr. Hogue, Mr. Koenig are talking about are real. I've heard that in the community too. Oh, I really want this person and them, so they'll prioritize their number one because they want to really make sure that shakes out. And again, I look forward to hearing more from them, because I think there's might be worthwhile to pursue that.
Okay, then I don't know if that would take probably a charter change or code change or whatever. Code change, all right. Okay, so that
Mr. Mayor?
brings us, yeah.
Can I ask a question real quick? So is this going to be on the December 17th
Member
agenda?
Mindy has requested it be on the December
Oh, okay.
16th
All right,
agenda as an
thanks.
action
Okay. I
item.
just wanted to clarify that for me. Thank you.
Okay, so that is going to bring us up to an executive session, so we need to adjourn from this meeting and have a motion to go into executive session for a specific reason. I think we know why.
I would move that we enter into executive session to discuss Petra 49 land exchange and potential Dolphin project and our manager's negotiations. Does that work?
Should work, yeah?
Second.
Yes.
Just so it's clear, I'd like to ask Glo, Liz, and Jody to stay, just because of their varying levels of expertise on this project.
With the properties, values, and...
Liz went through the whole P&Z thing, and their report, Jody on the financials, Glo visits for building.
I think that should be totally acceptable. Yeah. If that's okay with the assembly.
Yep.
Okay, all right, okay. That sounds good. So we'll take a 5-minute break. Need to empty the assembly chamber.